Let's get straight into it, Nubaid, with Leicester City versus Manchester United. Now, this is Saturday, 3 p.m. and the international break for both these teams. What I want to ask you first off is, has the international break helped any of these two? Because I generally think that a line is kind of drawn once you go into international break, and sometimes you're gasping for it to get a little bit closer to you quicker, and then other times you don't want it to come because you're on a great run of games. For both of these two, it's been a mixed bag. Man United have been getting the results overall, but the performances have been a bit dodgy. Leicester City haven't won the last 4, so they were probably desperate for it to turn up. How do you think these two clubs have gone into the international break, and do you think they will have solved anything coming out of it?
To be honest, I think United probably are in the exact same situation they were pre-international break, because they had this fixture list which is really, really tough, and there's no escaping it. Like, you get into an international break, and to be fair, I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would have just hoped there was no injuries, and there's been injuries. So now he's like, oh man, could have done without that international break, where maybe before he might have gone, maybe we need this international break. As for Leicester, they're just all over the shop at the moment. I think they were desperate for some sort of break, any sort of break. And again, for them, no injuries, because they've had quite a lot of injuries. I think if you look at Leicester, it's quite unfair early on in the season that a lot of people are going, they've been found out. I've heard that loads, but they've had a lot of changes and lots of injuries. In the last 6 games, they've had, in the last 6 games, they've had 6 different pairings at the back, whether it's a back 3 or a back 4. And then they've brought in Yannick Vestergaard. That's not really quite worked. And I just think if I'm looking at United, I don't know, like, as a footballer or as anyone, if you've got this big fixture run coming in, are you going into the internationals going, oh man, tie them off before the big games?
Well, I think the big problem for Manchester United, for any of those top 4 that we're now talking about, I think we're reverting back to a top 4, if I'm honest, when we look at the Premier League, or maybe soon to be a top 5 with Newcastle United. We're going to be talking about them a little bit later on. The problem with all of those guys is that they go on international duty, and you've actually had no time. You know, you could dive into the analytics a little bit more, or try and kind of hypothesize a vision for how you want to play, but you can't get on the training pitch and sort it out with everyone's, undivided attention, because they're all across the world playing international football. So, and then, like you say, you come back and you've actually still lost one player. I think this game, it could be down to the centre-backs of both teams, and Man United are missing 2, Harry Maguire and Varane. It looks like Harry Maguire is one of those, I think, where in the press he's saying, oh, I should be back soon. That for me means he will be back in the next week. And you talk about those fixtures as well. I can read them out for you. Leicester City, who have got a centre-back coming back in Johnny Evans, who I think we can all agree is so important to Leicester City. They take on Leicester City away, of course, this weekend. Then it's Liverpool at home, as you'll know, Nubaid, next week. Then Spurs away. Then Man City. Then Watford away, which I think if you are going to have that kind of reprieve or respite from games, you'd want Watford at home. Then Chelsea. Then Arsenal. It is outrageous, the fixtures that they've got coming up.
There's also Champions League games in between that. And they're in a situation where they can't just throw the Champions League. They can't just rotate, because they've got themselves in a situation where they need to win games. And they're also quite unlucky that 2 of the teams are going to be playing in the Champions League. One's Atalanta, who play explosive end-to-end football. You have to play their way, which in a way suits United. And one's Villarreal, who play boring and slow football, which is also United's kryptonite. So they've got a lot to juggle and lots to think about. I think they will have looked at the international break and gone, can we get players back in form? And they've got Pogba back in form. Yeah. But I don't know what that actually means, because Pogba for France is a different animal to Pogba at United. So I don't know if there's a thing with him where you go, you can have this Pogba, the France one, and he comes back to United, he's in form. Don't think it works like that with Pogba.
No, I agree. I think, and he was amazing in the Nations League. He was just so dominant in those games. What I would say is that he's got a massive part to play in this run of games, because if you think of the 2 centre-backs that they want to play, because I think there's a ripple effect that kind of crashes into Pogba sometimes, and sometimes they kind of make sure it sits right for them. And I think last season, what we saw with Cavani as someone up top that he was able to kind of play to and pass to, him playing on that left side a little bit, having Shaw on the overlap at times, but also those 2 defensive midfielders doing a lot of his work. It was all worked around him for him to get the best out of himself. This season, or certainly right now, that going into this run of games, if you don't have Maguire and Varane, there's been so much talk about the sixth position for Man United and what they should do, and they're just struggling to find that guy. And I was thinking prior to losing Maguire and Varane for these games, I was wondering if they go and be really, really brave. They've tried McTominay in there. He doesn't really want to get on the ball. Matic hasn't got the legs to get around. Fred wants to do it, but isn't good enough to do it. In terms of being good on the ball, if you have two fantastic centre-backs who are great on the ball and Pogba in front of him, who we know is also kind of has grown, I think, over the last few years as well, I think there might be a way that you could play a kind of double pivot and utilize the best bits of Pogba in terms of someone to kind of get on the ball. Because, I mean, overall, there's some great stats on Man United. Man United have the player with the most overall chances created, Bruno, 23. The most chances created from set plays, Luke Shaw. And the most assists in Pogba with 7 so far. In games that are a little bit easier, I know that. But the point is that Man United, we're all expecting a lot more from Man United. And that comes from dominating games and attacking threat. So that Pogba that we're seeing in France, when he's got Kante doing his running and those players around, great Benzema in front of him, a bit similar to, as I was saying last year, with Cavani in front of him, McTominay and Fred behind him. I think Man United need to double down on that with the two centre-backs out and go revert back to last season. What's going to be could be tricky for them is you've got to fit Ronaldo in there.
Well, that is part of the problem, which is where I was going to go next, is I think Pogba at France is unbelievable because he's got top players everywhere. And I think at United, there's this feeling of there's certain areas where you know he won't want to pass the ball. Whereas Pogba's like this expressive player who he's played without Kante a few times and still been just as good for France because he has this like responsibility on his shoulders and he's good with that. He quite likes it for France. But for United, I think because there's Bruno around, like the responsibility is sort of like passed around, the baton sort of passed around between players. I think Pogba is the one. I've said it for as long as I can think. He is the world-class player that if you unlock him, you suddenly don't have problems against sides that sit back. But then the problem now is, you just mentioned Cavani, whose movement's so good, almost similar to Benzema in a way, because they love to play on the shoulder. And also they're just intelligent footballers who create moments for other players. Ronaldo's not that guy. Ronaldo just wants to stand in the box and put the ball in the net. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem it comes when you've got someone like Pogba who wants the ball deep and wants to sort of like flick it into channels and play it into areas where strikers can get onto it. United have Ronaldo, who's static. They have Rashford, who always wants it to feet. They have Sancho, who always wants it to feet. They have Bruno, who always wants it to feet. Pogba doesn't want to play it to feet. And then I don't know about the sixth position, because every time I think of Pogba in the six, I just think you're losing so much of him if you put him next to McTominay or Fred. And I've been saying for a while, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just needs to get hold of Scott McTominay and say, you're built like an athlete. You can run, you can tackle. Just go and sit in the six and pass it side to side. You don't need to.
He doesn't want to though, mate. We saw that Villarreal against a team that isn't pressing at all. He didn't want. He was hiding. Trust me, I've done it myself. He was hiding all the time. He did not want to get on the ball. I've thought the same. That's why I wonder: is there a way of working it to create a bit more space on that left-hand side, which is getting overcrowded because Ronaldo keeps drifting over there as well? Is there a way where you go, okay, Scott McTominay or Fred, you go and do all my running, and I'll be a bit more maybe proactive in terms of how you get at the opposition. We know Bruno can work as well, and allow Pogba to be a bit more of a metronome for the team, because he is clearly the best player midfielder on the ball. So with this game, we're back from the international break. Two teams trying to get moving in the right direction. What is your prediction for the game, mate?
I'm going to go, after everything I've just said, I'm going to go 1-1. I think it'll be a good game, but I don't really fancy either team to win it.
Leicester have conceded 2 in their last 4. I think they'll do that again, but I think they'll score 2 as well. I think this is going to be 2-2. I think it'll be a Desmond. I think it's going to be a draw as well. Let us know what you think. And also, guys, let us know how many points you think Man United are going to get in the next 7 games. It's a very tough run, and it's going to be season defining for them. So let us know what you think on that one. Hi guys, James Allcott here from ESPN's Football Forecast. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and you want to check out more, make sure you subscribe to ESPN UK.